Very welcome. Thank you all very much for the opportunity to speak to you. This issue matters tremendously. I think that's evident by the fact that you have an overflow room full of people, the fact that there's as much media attention as there is. And why does it matter? Because it does affect our children and grandchildren. I was struck by something as Representative Carney spoke a moment ago. I mean, how much more brutal is it when your grandchild happens to go to the same failing school that your child went to? And in fact, perhaps the grandparent of that child. I mean, the reality is we have schools that have failed for generations. And they've failed in the very communities of people you're going to hear from in just a moment. The thing that's important for us to understand is we can do better. We can do better. This is all that is was noted. This isn't a silver bullet. There is no perfect solution to getting the absolute perfect path to educating our young people. There just isn't. And yet, we can borrow ideas from other places. We can see what has worked and what has not worked in other communities around the country. What we know for a fact is in 43 other states, charter schools have been in place for some period of time, in some for a quarter of a century. There's more than 7,000 charter schools in America, educating millions of children. And you will hear people that will come before this committee and tell you that this is the beginning of the end for public education. And that is entirely untrue. It is untrue. And it is some of the vitriol and some of the hype and some of the drama that has been shared and that you've been lit up with. We'll talk about green slips in a minute, and you all know what those are when you come in and find them stuck outside your office on a little piece of paper, on a little clip, or maybe on a pole. People who call and they're for or against something. Usually they're against something. And that's the way we are as Americans. We usually get worked up against something more than we are for it. But I'll tell you what's interesting. In all these states where this has been implemented, no public education system has been made worse, ever. And in fact, competition has heightened everyone's game. Children are better for it. And you'll hear about how this will somehow take over the system. It is important to remember this is a public school option. These schools will be attended by public school students, funded with the very same public education dollars, taught by public education teachers. The bottom line is this is an alternative for children who right now don't have any successful choice. It is the potential for a community to offer a better choice. The thing to remember as well is that you get lit up by folks who are opposed to the idea of competition. They like the status quo. They're afraid of being held to account. They're afraid of offering better choices. It might demand something of them. The irony is this: the people that are lighting you up, the people that are leaving those messages, the green slips you're getting, they're not coming from people like the young man to my right. You'll hear from him and his mother in a bit. They're not coming from him. He doesn't have the ability to weigh in on this issue. But you can bet the decision you make is going to affect his life. It's going to affect his life in powerful, powerful ways. And you are going to destine young men like this, and young women like him as well, who 5 and 6 and 7 years from now are going to be sent out into the world largely unprepared. We can do better. We owe them better than this. And so I'm asking you, please do hear, cut through the drama, and understand literally what is at stake here. This isn't about who has the loudest voice. It isn't about who's going to be for or against someone in the next election. Truth be told, the people that oppose this are never going to be any different than they've been for the last 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 years. They're going to be for and against the exact same people they have been. And the people that are going to testify against this are the very same people who spend millions of dollars weighing into political races. And they weigh in every single time on the exact same side. And you all know which side that is, and you know which side it isn't. And the point is, it's not about the children, and it should be. It's about power. It's about money. You will hear constant concerns about where the money goes and whether it crosses this line or that line. It's just been made very clear where the money goes and where it doesn't. It stays with the child in the district. And if the child leaves the district, the money stays in the district. I personally am not even sure that's the best approach, and yet the thing that I appreciate about this bill is that Representative Carney has worked tirelessly with so many different constituencies. This particular body, the Senate, has passed 4 charter bills in the last 6 years. 4. And they've been supported by a number of you right in front of me, Republican and Democrat alike. Every single one of them has passed the Senate with no less than 20 votes, some as many as 28 votes out of 38. Think about this. This has passed every time it's come before this body. It's hard for me to imagine that it's even needing a debate at this point. This idea that some would say, well, we're not ready, we haven't had time, we haven't studied it. Really? Has there been anything more topical, anything more well discussed in the last weeks, months, and frankly years in Kentucky? Anything that more directly affects our young people than this? I would say no. It is well known to those at hand what is at stake, and what is at stake is the future of young men who are 11 years old today that in 6-7 years are going to be heading out into the adult world, onto post-secondary school or the working world or who knows where. And the choices for many of these kids are not great. The last thing I'll say is this. You're going to hear from a man who, frankly, is probably, I would bet there's not a person in Kentucky who has invested more of his time and energy in learning about this issue than the man who's now our Secretary of Education and Workforce Development, Hal Heiner, who for decades literally has traveled around America and studied this in other schools and other states where it exists. And he has poured himself into understanding what the pros, cons, goods, bads, and otherwises are about this. You'll hear from him. You're going to hear, I believe, from Pastor Jerry Stevenson, who's over here to my left. For years, I've seen what he's done. For 40 years, he's been the pastor in a community in our city of Louisville, where in one of our urban cores, we have failed kids time and time again. There are schools where we have just plain dropped the ball. And Pastor Stevenson has had a heart for this for years and realized we can do better. And he has, for years, in a gymnasium that's attached to his church, taken in, through the years, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students who otherwise would have slipped through the cracks, and some of whom, who despite his best efforts, have slipped through the cracks. But they are brought in, not into a charter school, not even into a true school program, but into an after-school program where there is a safe place for them to go, where adults can pour into them, where they don't become just another statistic. And I've met with him, I've met with these parents, I've met with these children. And the impact of just that alone, that small bit of caring, that small bit of extra help, that small bit of relief that these children get is significant. It is significant. All we are asking, all I am asking, all I'm begging of this committee and of the Senate as a whole is to concur with the thinking of the House, where every single active public education teacher who is a member of the House of Representatives in this state is in support of House Bill 520. That's an important thing to think about. Those that are actually in the gap, that are being accused of selling out, are in fact the ones willing to take one for the team. And who is that team? That team is comprised of a whole lot of young people. This is the right thing to do. It costs nothing of anyone. It provides extraordinary opportunity to many. And I would strongly encourage your support of House Bill 520. Thank you.
Secretary Hunter.